What's up, everybody? It's Faraz. It's Zach. Week 14 is almost over, and you might already have a good idea of whether you're going to make the playoffs or not. I'm
Yeah.
hoping. I'm hoping that you're happy on this Monday morning. A lot of people, a little upset. A lot of underperformers yesterday on Sunday,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of people. If you didn't have a handful of guys who kind of did their thing, you were looking at a pretty low scoring week for the most part, right? There weren't a lot of ridiculously, high scoring players. So, a lot of people scratching and clawing, on their way to a week 14 victory.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys were able to come away with the victory and make your way into the playoffs. And a lot of people are fighting for that week, that week 15 bye as well. That bye, that makes a huge difference, because then
Yeah.
all you got to worry about is week 16 and week 17, and you don't have to worry about picking up somebody just to start in week 15. Maybe you have a couple guys that need to get healthier for week 16.
Yep.
That it means a lot. So,
And
hopefully you guys were able to do it.
with fantasy football, you're protected from that fluke performance. All it takes is one. Just one bad week. Your team can be fantastic every week, and then you have one bad performance in the playoffs, and you're done. So definitely that bye, like you said, a big difference maker, even though it might not seem like it.
I had Travis Etienne going yesterday. I had Jonathan Taylor on bye. Christian McCaffrey, though, came through for me.
Right.
Big time. I needed that performance.
He is back.
He's back. And you know who's not back? DeAndre Swift.
No.
DeAndre Swift is not back. We'll talk about him in a second. But just want to talk about our league real quick. So I was going into last night's game, projected to lose. So there was a chance that I was going to miss the fantasy playoffs. However, I was going up against Jeff Wilson. He did not come through,
right?
Because
he got injured.
Of the fact that he got hurt. Okay, so I got lucky there. And then my opponent also had Tua Tagovailoa, who also had a pretty down game.
It could have been a lot worse. It was bad up until garbage time, pretty much.
Sure, and then Tyreek ended up getting that touchdown, that receiving touchdown. He ended up with 2 touchdowns, dude. That fumble recovery that he picked up and then went all the way around the defense for that touchdown, that was amazing. That was such a cool play.
No, that was cool.
It does suck that he doesn't get the yardage for that, though, for fantasy.
Yeah, no, that's really stupid. I don't know. But you think about it, would you really count that then? Like that's tough, because we saw that with Derrick Henry. It was a similar situation. Derrick Henry and Treylon Burks a couple of weeks ago. Like Derrick Henry ran.
Well, Derrick Henry should get the yard. Derrick Henry should get the yardage, and then Treylon Burks should get the touchdown. In that case, in this case, it was what was it? Jeff Wilson fumble, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
And so he didn't lose the fumble, so he shouldn't lose any points. But he should get the yardage that he gained on that play, which was just a couple yards.
I think it was 12.
Or whatever.
I think it was 12.
Yeah. Oh, was it really? Oh,
I think.
And then Tyreek Hill should get the yardage from wherever that was. I think it was like a 40-yard, 50-yard touchdown, something like that. What?
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it was 60 yards. I mean, what I saw when it went into the play-by-play, it said
exactly.
I think it said 60. So
exactly,
that's a whole touchdown.
I feel like he should have got those yards. I don't know. That's just me, though.
They should allow like complete custom scoring options in fantasy. Obviously, it's tough, but just allow us to have full control. That would be crazy.
Yeah, I think we do have control on some of these platforms. We just don't think about it to
That's
set
true.
it that way.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think so. Yeah. So now going into tonight, I'm down by 20 in PPR, and I have Mac Jones and Hollywood Brown left. So I think I'm looking okay. I'm not going to wood here, but I think I'm looking okay. Obviously, I need them to have decent games. Mac Jones has a good matchup. Hollywood, decent matchup. I'm really curious to see where Cliff Kingsbury lines up Hollywood this week without Rondell Moore in the fold. Does Greg Dortch get that slot role? Who knows? I don't know.
Right.
But I'm curious to see what happens. Now,
Mac Jones,
I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
But you never know with Mac Jones.
I would be less worried about Mac Jones than Marquise Brown. I'm not worried about Marquise Brown either, but I think Mac Jones, he's pretty much a lock for 10 points. Obviously it's okay. I don't want to jinx anything.
You hear me? You hear me?
I'll knock too. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, he's been very consistently, and his production's been mediocre. But if you need 10 points, I feel like you have that coming for you, especially like we said, with a good matchup against the Cardinals. They're not the Vikings, but they're not a good defense. They'll have some bad days. I think this could be a bad day for the Cardinals defense again. I think this could be a high scoring game. Mac Jones should be just fine. He's a game manager. That's why you see his ceiling isn't very high. But he's efficient enough that he can get it done for you. And then you're relying on Marquise Brown. He led the team in targets last week over DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think he needs to lead the team in targets to score 10 points. So I'm looking at it like that way. All you need is both of them to score 10 points, and I think you can get that easily. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. If it gets to like halftime, though, and you're not at least halfway there,
what should I do, Zach? What should I do?
Don't ask me.
I'm turning that game off and going to sleep. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna wake up and hope that things went my favor. Yeah, how did your matchup go yesterday?
Yeah, don't ask me about how to play fantasy football, I guess, at this point. It's a sad, sad story. So can I just tell a quick story? Please. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to throw it all the way back to week 12. Yeah. When I chose to start Trey McBride over Hayden Hurst. And it was only a 9-point difference, but I lost by 1 point that week. That made this week, just week 14, a win in your end game. And I'm missing Justin Fields and Brian Robinson on bye. And I was a waiver wire team this week. I mean, I had Justin Herbert. And like you said, we had a bunch of playmakers and a bunch of, generally high-scoring players really just put up duds this week. And I fell victim to that big time. DeAndre Swift looked like he was back. 6.9 points, PPR. Devontae Adams, 10 points. Gabe Davis, okay, he had 6 points. Amari Cooper, he had 6 points. Daniel Bellinger was out. I started him from the waiver wire. Devontae Parker yet to play, but I don't think he's putting up 70. Devin Duvernay had 0. My only pickup, I picked up Chuba Hubbard, and he put up 18. So, props there. I picked him up. I started him. Justin Herbert had 19. I lost by 70, and I am going to be out of the playoffs because I don't think I have the tiebreaker for points 4. So that's how my week is going. It's been rough. It's fine. It's fine, though. It's okay. It's okay.
It is okay, Zach.
Yeah. I'm just going to play DFS the rest of the year. That's what it's going to be.
Just play Underdog. We're going to be doing these drafts every week now. By the way, the draft that we did with our community on Friday, on the podcast, we came in second.
Second overall?
Bad. Yeah.
What do you mean second?
Second this week. Like we came in second place. Like with that draft that we did on Friday.
Oh, of the 6 teams?
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were saying second place like overall. I was like, isn't that a ton of money?
Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah, I was gonna say no. Like
no,
out of
not yet.
Hundreds of thousands of.
I have to check that one to see what we ended up doing and how we did. I'm gonna let's check it live right now and see where we ended up.
I did one of my own, and it wasn't. It was looking good, and then it wasn't. I rolled the dice on Saquon, hoping you could get him on a value. How's our team do? I know we had Tony Pollard, so that was okay, right?
I think did we have Tony Pollard and Christian McCaffrey? I can't remember. Let's see. For some reason, I can't find. Oh, here we go.
I think we had Pollard and CMC. We also had Geno Smith and DK Metcalf on the stack, and they didn't do a whole lot.
So we did pretty well. We won $9 from our $5 entry. So we ended up. I'm trying to see exactly where we ended up, but we ended up like pretty high.
I think it's like top 30% wins. So like,
yeah, exactly. We were in the top 30. I think we were in the top 20. Honestly. We did pretty good. So we had Greg Dulcich, Chris Godwin, he dudded, DK Metcalf, Christian McCaffrey, Tony Pollard, and Geno Smith. So, if we chose a better tight end or a better wide receiver, I think we would have won some more money.
Yeah, I saw. Did you look at the winners? Their lineups? It was all Eagles. It was Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Devontae Smith. Like, it was just all Eagles.
All right, let's do it, man. Let's get into week 14. Let's review it.
Let's get into what the people are here for.
And we're going to review. We're going to, there's going to be a lot of touch points here where people are going to be like, oof, that one hurt. I get it. Okay, let's go through it, though.
This one could be traumatic.
A huge disappointment, honestly, like for me, was T. Higgins and what happened there. He wasn't listed on the injury report going into the weekend, yet, in the game, it was reported that he's available but may not play that much due to a hamstring injury. He was on the field for one snap in this game. And apparently, a report came out after the game from Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com that he tweaked his hamstring pregame. And that's a really unfortunate situation. I wish we could have found out about this pregame. Now, you ready for the conspiracy theory?
What is it?
Jeff Hobson works for Bengals.com. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the official Bengals website. And he's the only one that has reported that he tweaked his hamstring pregame. Okay. I don't know if that's really what happened here. Okay. And I'm because the report during the game said that he was coming into the game expecting to not play that much. But yet he was off the injury report. So there was some sort of, something going on there. And that's not cool, right? Because people are putting so much money up in DFS, people putting so much money up, just betting on the game in general. The NFL needs to be more transparent about this. The Bengals need to be more transparent. This is the second time that they did this with T. Higgins, right? And, it's a situation where it's not cool, man. Like, they have to report these type of injuries to be transparent. Like, I want the Bengals, like, I would love for the Bengals to be fine, like, or Zach Taylor to be fine. Like, they have to, because otherwise the integrity of the game gets a little tarnished here. And, all these people who are putting up money, they're screwed, because of situations like this.
Yeah, that did really confuse me. I didn't figure he was going to miss as much time as he did. He said he played one snap.
One snap.
Yeah, one snap. That's pretty bad. It's one thing if you get injured during the game. I think that was the case with Tyler Boyd. So yes. That happens. But coming into the game,
Tyler Boyd dislocated his finger early in the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff happens. But you're right. Like, if he's going to go out, what's the point of playing him one snap and then pull him off the field? That's just like, a kick in the nuts to the fantasy community. And yes,
if he was on the injury report, if he was questionable going into the game, okay. Like, sure. Yeah. But you took him off the injury report.
Right. Yeah. That makes no sense. With it, it's like, I feel funny complaining about it because it's like, this is fantasy football, it's like, who cares? It's fantasy football. This guy's hurt or not, that's the way it goes. But it's like, it still counts because a lot of people have money riding on this. And I've talked to a lot of people, and it's pretty much an agreement. I don't know if you would agree, but fantasy football is now bigger than football itself, and all the DFS and the betting. It's so much bigger than the game. Obviously, the important part of the game is the players, but that kind of clarification makes a big difference. Like, people probably had really bad days yesterday. Obviously, if you're playing like a $5 underdog draft like we did, who cares? But
it doesn't matter.
If you're picking player props and you have a lot of money on it, like that's
I also think it doesn't really it matters and we care about it for fantasy purposes, like just our fantasy leagues. For me, it doesn't even matter as much for fantasy, but like when it comes to like daily, like DFS, like people putting up big money. When it comes to betting, people putting up big money. There's a lot of money involved in these games here, and the NFL knows it. I mean, they're partnered with the DraftKings of the world and all these other. They're partnered with sports books, right? Yeah. So it's not like the NFL is denying any of this. They're partnered with these guys. So, it's interesting, man. And I'm hoping that they can kind of get that right, because that what happened yesterday with T. Higgins was not cool at all. No. But yeah. Anyway, so Tyler Boyd, he dislocated his finger too. They're calling it a week-to-week injury. It's possible that he's back next week, but maybe not. It's possible that Joe Burrow has only Jamar Chase for the most part next week to throw to. But just keep an eye on that situation, going into next week.
With the Bengals receivers, would you pick up either Trent and Trent instead of Trent and Irwin and Trent Taylor? Would you pick either of them up? I don't know.
Not really. I mean, it's not like they got like a bunch of targets or anything like that. Like the target distribution really just ended up going towards Jamar Chase. So I don't think so. Like maybe Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine just end up getting more targets, like if these guys are out. But I don't think I can depend on either of those guys next week. Even in a desperate situation, like probably not. Like I probably won't be going that way. Maybe they'll come up with like a touchdown or something like that. Like maybe, but since I didn't really see the targets distributed outside of Jamar Chase, I'd probably stay away.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just interested because that is suddenly a really thin wide receiver room. We're coming into the week. it looked loaded,
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Now it was reported that Amari Cooper was going to be in a snap count, but he wasn't. He ran a route on 44 of 49 dropbacks, but only ended up with 2 catches for 42 yards on 7 targets. It was DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who got the targets and the production. 8 catches for 114 yards and 12 targets on 12 targets. And this was a tough matchup. And Deshaun Watson also looking for David Njoku pretty often. He ended up second in targets with 9, caught 7 for 59 and a touchdown. So,
right.
He's solid moving forward. Like if you have Njoku, you're starting him as your tight end 1. So it's interesting because now Deshaun Watson, we'll see if Amari, can get something going with Deshaun because it hasn't happened through 2 games now. Yes, Amari was banged up, but he did play, on almost every passing snap in this game. So like, don't really want to put any excuses up for him because he only caught 2 balls in this game. So DPJ though, this is a career game for him. I think moving forward, you can start him as a wide receiver 3. And Njoku, obviously, you're starting him as well moving forward.
Yeah, and this was the concern with Amari Cooper. And it's funny because he looked really good with Jacoby Brissett coming in the season. People were expecting him to play with Deshaun. Maybe if he didn't get the suspension, they were excited about that. Jacoby Brissett came in and he looked good with Jacoby Brissett. Now Deshaun Watson's here. The impact of a quarterback change is huge. And it looks like Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be the guy getting more targets, the rest of the way. I'm not sure. I don't think it's Amari Cooper's fault. I think it's just the way that Deshaun Watson is going to play. He looked a little bit better than he did yesterday, but nothing too inspiring. I think Amari Cooper, this is kind of what I'm expecting for him the rest of the season. Maybe they go through the entire offseason next season, and next season they come out and he's better. But until Deshaun Watson gets his feet underneath him, I don't think there's any sustainable part of this offense that you can be able to rely on besides maybe David Njoku. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think he's going to get enough targets to be relevant. Amari Cooper is now, I think he's clearly out of the wide receiver 2 conversation for me at this point, because Deshaun Watson, not only is he not a really good quarterback right now, but he's not looking for Amari Cooper. Obviously, he had 7 targets, but only caught 2 of them. A couple of those could go on Deshaun Watson's shoulders as well. A better pass, could have had Amari Cooper catch a couple more passes. So I think the rest of the way, if I have Amari Cooper, like, am I starting him in my fantasy championships? I don't think so, unless he's like for me, he's like a desperate flex play at this point. And I don't want to. I want to say I'm overreacting, but I don't feel like I am in this situation because the receivers here, they're not in a good spot with Deshaun Watson, and it also doesn't help that the run game in Cleveland has just dried up. Like, I don't know what that's about with Nick Chubb. He's been super quiet these past few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I think going into next week, the matchup against Baltimore, as long as Marlon Humphrey stays on the inside, if he stays in the slot, I think Amari Cooper can be fine. We've seen some perimeter wide receivers do their thing against Baltimore lately. So I'm still starting Amari probably as a wide receiver 3, solid wide receiver 3. Maybe I'll have him, right around right in my top 30, maybe right at the bottom of my top 30, something like that, especially with, I think there's no teams on bye in week 15.
No,
right? So
none the rest of the way.
Now you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have a lot of options to start over Amari Cooper. So I get it, man. It's been tough so far. But at least the good thing is that he'll be at home next week.
Yeah, you can hang your hat on that. I mean, it's just a fall from grace for Amari Cooper because he looks so good. I was actually calling him a wide receiver 1, with Jacoby Brissett. And then you probably had him 3 weeks ago. You're probably thinking, all right, going into the playoffs, things can only get better. Maybe Deshaun Watson comes back and looks good. I have my wide receiver 1 or even a strong wide receiver 2 locked up for the playoffs. And it's been worst case scenario with Deshaun Watson's return from a fantasy perspective. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you're hurting definitely if you had him, and your value is like way down.
One thing to keep in mind though, that these 2 matchups were tough matchups. Okay. Against Houston, tough matchup. They only allowed 1 wide receiver 1 week all season long. Cincinnati, tough matchup as well. So, coverage rolling towards Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones having a big game. I would say don't overdo it with Amari Cooper, right? Like, I don't want to get too cute with it next week. I'm still going to start Amari Cooper. But obviously if you have options, you got to consider them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so J.K. Dobbins came back on Sunday. He took 15 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. Good stat line. He did have a big 44-yard run. You can kind of tell that he's not 100% because
Yeah.
he
I
should
know
have
what
took
you're
that one
talking
to the
about.
house. You saw it, right? Like the
Yep.
way he was running, it's like, whoa, like why is he running like that? So you can
It
tell
looked like
he was favoring one of his sides. That's for
it looked
sure.
like he had like weights on his legs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
He was like, it
exactly.
looked like he was exerting himself, picking his feet up.
Right. And you can tell that he was like favoring one side. Like it was
Yeah.
almost like he was limping, but he wasn't. But overall, solid day. He split carries with Gus Edwards, 15 to 13. So I think moving forward, he's probably like a touchdown dependent, low end RB2. Now keep in mind that Tyler Huntley left the game with a concussion. He might be out next week. So they have an undrafted rookie quarterback, Anthony Brown, who I'm not even sure you can trust in Superflex leagues, next week. But, we'll see if the Ravens, choose to address the position somehow, pick somebody up off the street today and, kind of bring him in. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. I don't know who it would be, but we'll see.
I think they have to pick somebody up. I mean, if
like
this
Cam
offense
Newton?
has any hope, that's what I was just going to say. Cam Newton. I don't know if he'd be a fit. Obviously he's been out of football a little bit. I think he would fit. I think he could do what they need to do because assuming Tyler Huntley is just a concussion, that's not a long-term injury. It might be a week or two. He should be back relatively soon. And I think Tyler Huntley is clearly an upgrade over Cam Newton. But if you're going to pick anybody up, he could fit. He could fit the system because it's funny because I hadn't heard about Cam Newton for like the entire season, and then a post popped up on my feed.
I mean, he's just busy doing podcasts right now.
Yeah,
like he has he has his Freaky Friday podcast, whatever the hell it's called, and like he's just doing that pretty much.
They absolutely have to pick somebody up. They have to, because if they want any hope of clinging to the playoffs, I mean, obviously they're going to be in the playoffs. I think, assuming a collapse doesn't happen, but if they want to maintain seeding, then they have to pick somebody up because they just handed the ball off.
It's a good matchup for these running backs next week against Cleveland, but if they don't have a quarterback, if Anthony Brown is going to be their quarterback, then they can just stack the box, right?
Yeah.
And they also don't have weapons like that. So like who do they need to defend besides Mark Andrews, right? So they can, even though the Browns they're an easy matchup for running backs. This could turn into a tough matchup for running backs real fast. So I'm not hanging my hat that J.K. Dobbins is going to have a big game next week by any means.
It's a good thing for the Ravens. Their defense has been playing better because they're going to need it this next week.
It's true. That's true. Kenny Pickett, he also left the game with a concussion. He was cleared. He came back in, and then he left the game again. So, don't know what the deal is there. But Mitch Trubisky was the guy pretty much all game long. My guess is he'll be their starter next week, assuming that Kenny Pickett does have a concussion. Deontay Johnson ended up benefiting from that. He caught 6 for 82 yards and 8 targets. Deontay Johnson had much better games with Trubisky under center. So I'm more confident in Deontay next week as like a low-end PPR wide receiver 3. He wasn't even that for me, going into the last couple of weeks,
right?
With Pickett. So, against Carolina, it's a decent matchup. If Trubisky starts, then, I'm okay throwing Deontay in my flex in full PPR leagues.
Yeah.
We talked about
that's where Deontay Johnson's going to make his money in PPR. I mean, he's not much of a play outside of that.
Has he caught a touchdown this year?
I don't think
think so. No.
Let me check.
Can you believe that?
That's insane, no touchdowns. Dude. A lot of people were high on Deontay Johnson too coming in the season, and I wasn't, but I know a couple people who were. It's like the quarterback situation was just so much in flux. I didn't trust it, and it looks like that's kind of
I like Deontay Johnson at his price because usually guys who perform as well as he does continues to perform. I think Deontay Johnson, like next year, if I don't know if Pickett's going to be the quarterback, I don't know what's going to happen there, but like we can easily see I can see Deontay Johnson being this year's version of like Miles Sanders, where Miles Sanders scored 0 touchdowns last year, and then Deontay Johnson comes in next year and starts scoring based on volume. I can see it. He's a good receiver. I don't want to give up on him.
Yeah, I would be genuinely surprised too. Speaking of giving up, if they would give up on Kenny Pickett that fast.
I know.
I think that's really rough because we saw a lot of people clamoring for Jalen Hurts to be given up on after those few games last season, and then he's come out and looked a lot better. I think you give Kenny Pickett a little time, and he could be pretty good. So I would just give him the time.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You don't think so?
I don't see it, man. I don't
All
see
right,
it.
that's fine.
With Jalen Hurts, I saw some potential. I did.
Yeah. Well, you look at the physical tools that he has.
Yeah,
He's mobile and he's a bigger quarterback.
yeah,
I think that you could definitely look at.
yeah. And we saw what he did in college. In good competition. And he was able to get it done too. Like so, but
Yeah.
Pickett can't say the same for him. But
All right,
yeah,
we'll see.
we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, let's see what else do we got here. So Pat Freiermuth in this game. We talked about his route participation going down last week. It stayed that way for the second game in a row. Luckily, he caught the touchdown, right? So last week he got lucky because he had that big play. This week he got lucky. I mean, listen, we're at the tight end position at this point. Like you just need to get lucky, right? But he did catch the touchdown. But this is still something to monitor, and a reason to lower expectations moving forward. But at the same time, it's like there's not many tight ends to choose from. So at the end of the day, you're probably going to still start him. If he's your only tight end, you're probably going to still continue to start him next week.
Would you say he's clearly out of that like solid starter range at this point?
Yeah,
or no?
I would say so. Yeah,
I
think he's in the streaming. He's a streamer at this point. He's like, if we had a bunch of tight ends to choose from, like he would be in the low end tight end one conversation. Like, do I choose him or do I like? He's in the same range as Tyler Conklin to me right now. And it doesn't seem that way, but their route participation is the same. It's just that Conklin hasn't scored, right? And he's also not as good of a player as Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth is a lot more talented. But that's why Freiermuth is able to kind of overcome it a little bit better than someone like Conklin, for example.
Do you think Greg Dulcich is like head and shoulders above Freiermuth at this point?
No, because it's like it goes back. There's so many factors, right? It's like route participation. What kind of offense are you on?
Right.
How talented are you? Right. So there's a lot of factors here. Like look at Gerald Everett. His route participation has been low all year long, but in a lot of games he's been able to overcome it because of his quarterback and the offense that he's on. Right.
Right. That's true.
Pat Freiermuth his offense isn't as great, but when it comes down to it, he's able to make plays. On limited opportunity. Look at what's his name? The Titans.
Chigoziem Okonkwo.
Okonkwo, dude, like, yeah, we'll get to him in a little bit, but like someone like him, he's looking really good, right? And on limited opportunity, he didn't have a full route participation this past week or the week before, but he was able to get it done because he's looking pretty talented. And we'll get to him in a little bit because I have something to say about him. But going, because I want to kind of go in order so our producer doesn't kill me. So let's go to the Jets real quick, man. Zonovan Knight, he was the guy for the Jets out of the backfield, out carried Carter 17-5. He caught 2 balls as well. He's a solid RB2 rest of the season. Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle, the next 3 weeks, right? That's a solid, that's pretty solid right there. And he's going to be a solid part of your playoff run going forward. Another plus is that this was a 2-man backfield rather than a 3-man backfield with Michael Carter back. Ty Johnson didn't play a snap in this game, and James Robinson was a healthy scratch. So that's great news moving forward for Zonovan Knight.
Yeah, and it was cool that it was a 2-man backfield, but did it feel a whole lot like it? Zonovan Knight, he got a lot of carries. And yes, Michael Carter got more targets, but it looks like Zonovan Knight, he's not only going to hold on to that role that he had without Michael Carter. I think with Michael Carter back, they might actually be interested in giving him a majority of the work. And we'll see how they, handle that moving forward. But I think Zonovan Knight, he's not Breece Hall, but maybe they just want to roll with him at this point because he's talent that they drafted. They brought him in and he's producing. He's doing what he needs to do. I mean, Michael Carter, it seems like they're going to be fine even if Michael Carter doesn't produce like he did yesterday. And of course, they didn't win this game, but Zonovan Knight was not a reason why they weren't winning. He was doing very good, and he's going to continue to do that. I mean, what if his PPR outputs look like the past few weeks? 13, 16, 15? Like, I'll take that at my RB2 every week. Oh, yeah. It looks like that's what you're going to get with him.
I can see that continuing. Michael Carter, he played 50% of the snaps, but he was really on the field for passing downs. He ended up getting 5 targets in this game, but that's really what his role is going to be. It looks like as far as the run game goes, it's all Zonovan Knight.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what's cool, and you don't want to call Zonovan Knight an early down guy because he can get it done in the receiving game too. But, with that early down role, I mean, he's going to be locked in for a lot more touches, I think, than Michael Carter.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Michael Carter can be dropped right now. Straight up.
Yeah.
He could be dropped.
Definitely.
He's just a handcuff at this point. You can't really play him. And Elijah Moore, man. Elijah Moore led the Jets with 10 targets, 6 for 60. And, we talked about something like this being possible this week based on his rap participation last week. He became a full-time player last week, right? And it was up there again this week. It wasn't a 1-week blip. And it probably would have happened whether Corey Davis got banged up or not in this game. By the way, Corey Davis does have a head injury. Looks like he's in concussion protocol. A lot of concussions this week, dude. But anyway, Elijah Moore, if he's available in your league, he should be picked up. I just talked about the schedule, right, for Zonovan Knight, right? It's the same thing. You have Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle the next 3 weeks. Those are good matchups for the Jets overall. And if Elijah Moore is going to be in line for a potential 10-target game, he's talented. He could do his thing. And this was not the best matchup in the world against Buffalo, but like these matchups that I just mentioned, he can probably do some things. And if you're in need of a wide receiver 3, if you're in need of a flex player, I think Elijah Moore is somebody that you need to pick up right now.
I think you could definitely roll the dice on Elijah Moore. And, obviously Mike White, he was in and out of the lineup. And I don't know what his status is moving forward, if he's going to be able to play next week. I think they said he went and he got evaluated for some type of internal injury, which obviously is not good.
He went to the hospital, he got evaluated, and it seems like he was good to go, and he was able to fly back with the team.
Right. Okay. So that's good news. And even if Mike White, wouldn't play, I think he's going to, if that's the case. Joe Flacco, I think, could get it done too. We didn't see a whole lot of him, but we know they like to throw the ball a lot. And pretty much anyone but Zach Wilson is going to be okay for Elijah Moore because Zach Wilson just didn't throw to Elijah Moore. But definitely, if you are sitting, at a spot where you're you're in the playoffs and you don't have a wide receiver 3, I think Elijah Moore could definitely come through and fill that role for you because, like you said, he's now a full-time player and this offense is going to be good. They're playing the Lions and they've been playing better football. But I think that the Jets have a pretty good matchup, that week, next week going into that. Elijah Moore is going to be a contributor working alongside Garrett Wilson. The offense as a whole with Mike White has been, perfectly, conducive for fantasy production. I like Elijah Moore next week. And definitely this week was really encouraging to see.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. And this was the highest route participation that he's had since week 3. So, that was a long time ago. Devin Singletary on the other side of the ball, he ended up out-touching and out-snapping James Cook. This just seems like a backfield to avoid at this point. Like, unless these guys are going to be up in these games and they're going to be able to run the ball a ton. Not sure I love them against Miami next week, but against Chicago in week 16, maybe, right? I can see that, being a game where, these guys can get 35 combined opportunities maybe. But I don't know how you can trust them, like in your championship week, for example, like unless you're desperate. Like both are holds, I think, on your roster. Like I don't want to drop either of them right now because you never know what could happen. It could go in one way or the other. But like this was pretty disappointing. We knew this was. We talked about this right on Friday, I think it was, where it's like, it was only a 1 week sample size with James Cook getting the majority of the touches, and it just flipped right back to Devin Singletary. But in a situation where even Singletary didn't get a really high distribution of the opportunities, it was relatively even for the most part this game.
Yeah, that's what it was. And the thing is, even if it would flip one way, like Devin Singletary, he got most of the touches this week, or James Cook got most of the touches last week. The ceiling on these running backs is not very high. It's not going to be like guys like Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, that's a high standard to go to, but I'm not even sure it's like Zonovan Knight. I think Zonovan Knight has a higher ceiling than he's shown the past few weeks. I'm starting Zonovan Knight over both of these guys regardless. Even if it would go one way, I trust Zonovan Knight to get it done. Even if he's splitting with Michael Carter over one of these two guys getting most of the work, just because they don't emphasize running back position very much at all in Buffalo. And, you look at it, maybe you could say, oh, the low production was because of the Jets, which the Jets did give them fits. Once again, Josh Allen, he struggled. And the offense as a whole, Stephon Diggs only had 37 receiving yards, which is just crazy. It was an off day. This is what I think you're kind of in line for, because if you say that the Bills are going to get back and they're going to get right on offense, it's not going to be through the running backs. They'll be complimentary at best. And that's why I'm saying that their ceiling, it might be 15 points. They're not going to be catching a ton of balls. They're not going to be running a bunch. If they're scoring, it's going to be through Josh Allen. And that's part of the problem of being on an offense that's loaded like this. You might be a good talent in the backfield, but the way that they deploy this offense, it's just not going to be conducive enough for either of these guys to be started on a weekly basis. And especially going in to the playoffs with this matchup as the most recent, this performance, like, you can't trust them. And I wouldn't. I agree with you.
How about this Cowboys-Texans game, huh?
Yeah.
Texans out both of their top receivers, Davis Mills and Jeff Driscoll, rotating at quarterback.
Yep.
Chris Moore stepping up with 10 catches for 124 yards on 11 targets. You want to pick him up. Great schedule the rest of the way in case Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins don't play, in case they get shut down. But miscues on special teams by Dallas, a couple picks on offense by Dak Prescott. They kept Houston in this game, and the Cowboys almost lost it. Luckily, the Cowboys were able to, at the end, figure out a way to win that game. But it was definitely a close one. And as a Cowboys fan, I see you have your Dak Prescott jersey on right now, Zach.
He redeemed himself. You're
looking like Zach. You're looking like Zach Prescott today.
Oh yes, of course. I am bringing back the Halloween costume that I had the other time that I wore. But the thing about this game, and just to preface this, a win is a win. Dak Prescott redeemed himself, but it looked like this game was going to be exactly what we thought it was going to be. With Dallas going up, and then the offense coming off the field, and they don't have to do anything until that muff punt, and then that gave the Texans life, and then the interceptions, like we said. And now I'm a Dak Prescott fan. I can defend, I think, both of his interceptions, but the thing is, he's been turning the ball over a lot, and that's actually hurting his fantasy production. But the takeaway here isn't so much from the Cowboys, because we know they're going to be able to, get it done every week. Especially Tony Pollard. Again, he looked really good with 2 touchdowns, just ridiculous. And Ezekiel Elliott, even in a down game, both of these guys got it done. But the takeaway for me here is, the Texans offense, like you said, the receivers. 2 guys that could potentially be quality starters for you if you need them, down the stretch. This offense had no value before. And now Chris Moore coming with 11 targets, 124 yards. I'm not sure how much I trust that type of performance to be duplicated next week, but he should have a solid enough floor. Amari Rodgers did a little bit. He scored a touchdown. I'm not starting either of these quarterbacks. They had the platoon coming out, and I was sweating really bad, this game, because I was like, we're going to lose to a platoon of quarterbacks of Jeff Driscoll and Davis Mills. And Dallas lost it on that one pick. I could have sworn they lost the game with the 5 minutes left. That goal line stand was a miracle. And then the second miracle was going 98 yards for a touchdown. So that kind of renewed a little bit of hope in me that they could, they're not fakers, but scary game overall for me as a Cowboys fan. But the takeaway here, like I said, is Houston's players, not Dallas. Dallas can be fine. Tony Pollard looking like he's going to be able to produce week in and week out. That's the only thing you can really say about Dallas. And Dak Prescott, he's been a middle of the pack starter for you. He's going to continue to be that. Not much really to take away from this fantasy wise, but it was definitely a storyline in that 1 p.m. slate. Definitely, what's it called if you're watching Red Zone.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And Dameon Pierce, he had a solid game, 22 for 78 and a touchdown, but he did leave the game late with an ankle injury. Right. Early prognosis seems to be a low ankle, so it's possible he's back next week. If he's out, there's nobody on the Texans backfield that I would play. We'll probably see a 3-way committee between Dare Ogunbowale and Eno Benjamin leading the way, with Rex Burkhead kind of, trailing and getting a couple touches here and there. So I would not go near that backfield if Dameon Pierce is out.
No.
But what a game from Justin Jefferson against the Lions. Redeemed himself from that first time against the Lions. 11 catches for 223 yards. It could have been an even bigger day if the refs didn't declare that Jefferson went out of bounds on what would have been another long touchdown. It would have been an extra 30 yards and a touchdown if they didn't call him out. I'm kind of glad that they did, because I was going up against them. If they did, I would have probably lost my week. But the refs called him out. But nonetheless, like, the dude came through for you when you needed him the most.
Yeah, this is one of the big names that actually produced this week.
One
a
of
lot
the
of big
only
names
ones.
didn't, but he produced and he came through big for you. So that's one thing. Justin Jefferson, I don't think anyone was worried about him having a dud performance, but with the way things were going, it seemed like he might not have. I think Justin Jefferson, he was very good. Obviously, a lot of this I think came in garbage time. Minnesota was down pretty much all day, but that's okay for fantasy football. with the way that the Vikings defense plays, every game's going to be high scoring, which means Justin Jefferson's going to have to be doing things on offense to keep the Vikings in the game. And they weren't in the game really at all against Detroit, but that's what you want to see, I think, from a fantasy perspective. If you're just a fantasy player, this is exactly the type of game you want to see for the Vikings receivers.
It's crazy, man. Like the only guys I'm looking at it right now, Christian McCaffrey, obviously he came through.
Yep.
Justin Jefferson came through. Austin Eckler came through. Tony Pollard came through. Keenan Allen, even though we had lower expectations on him.
Mm-hmm. Mike Williams, even though
Josh Jacobs a little bit, Mike Williams a little bit, but that's really it, man. Nobody had this huge day. Tyreek did all right. But yeah, like no one had this huge day, like besides those guys, which is crazy, man. Like the week that you needed so many guys to do their thing, they just fell through, So you kind of, like I said, scratching and clawing your way into the fantasy playoffs. But hopefully you were able to get it done. A guy that we were recommending this week was DJ Chark. He ended up coming through as we thought he would. His second 90-yard receiving game in a row.
Yep.
Not sure I'd be starting him next week against the Jets, but I would hold him for Carolina, hold him for Chicago the week after. Jameson Williams ended up getting his first catch in the NFL, and of course, it had to be a 41-yard touchdown. He only ran 6 routes in this game, so he is not startable right now. But we'll keep an eye on those routes as they continue to go up moving forward.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm looking at all these numbers for the Lions receivers. Like, this team is playing really good offense, and it's not just through Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, DJ Chark looks like he's going to be a longer-term contributor than, maybe he might have looked like at the beginning of the season. Josh Reynolds, I think that Rams connection with Jared Goff is kind of buoying him a little bit, but, he's getting it done regardless. And now Jameson Williams, you add him to the mix. If only these running backs could have got it done. You know what I'm saying? Imagine what the offense would look like then. Jared Goff.
So frustrating.
How about Jared Goff? Like, he's looking good. And I saw a report somewhere that he's like expected to be their quarterback, next season. They might just roll with him. At this point, why not? Like,
that's a good choice.
I think you have to, because they're not in tank position. They're not going to go get Bracy or any of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. I'm sorry, man. They're a win now team. That's what I was going to say. Like, they're winning now, like with Jared Goff, and they're in position to make the playoffs. And why would you switch away from that at this point, right?
Yeah, and people forget, Jared Goff, he had a rough stint at the end of his time with the Rams, and he was pretty rough coming into this time with the Lions. But he has, Super Bowl pedigree. He went to a Super Bowl. He's been on successful teams, high-powered offenses that beat Patrick Mahomes in a 50-point game. Like, he has this experience under his belt. He knows how to play football. And when he came to the Lions, this was a much worse roster. But since they've added guys on the line, the offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. They drafted Penei Sewell, who had a catch for a first down to ice the game. Like, This is a good offense. And with Jared Goff, all he has to do is play efficiently, which is exactly what he's doing. And he's throwing deep passes to these guys. A lot of touchdowns. I saw him air it out a couple times, and it was end up in the receiver's hands for a touchdown. Like, I think you kind of upgrade this whole offense a little bit with the way Jared Goff is playing. And does Jared Goff, can we slide him in? Did we have him as a top 12? Can we slide him into the top 12? Is he a QB1 moving forward? I think maybe.
Maybe, but you got to keep in mind the matchups that he just had, right? He went up against Jacksonville last week, was able to put up 340 yards, went up against Minnesota, put up 330 yards. So these were the two worst defenses, in the NFL when it comes to defending quarterbacks. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Jared Goff, comes back down to earth, right? They're going to go up against the Jets this week. So I will definitely not be putting him in anywhere near my top 15 even, especially with all these quarterbacks coming back from bye. I don't even know if he's going to be in my top 18 this week. So it's one of those situations where like it's going to be matchup dependent for me with Jared Goff. But the good thing is that we know that the receivers that should be getting it done will most likely be getting it done in most matchups, like Amon-Ra St. Brown. DJ Chark might be a little bit more matchup dependent, but in terms of like what he needs to get done, when he needs to get it done, I feel like he's capable of doing what he needs to do, in those specific matchups. But we've seen him, have a little bit of trouble with tougher matchups. But the good thing is that this Lions defense is now stepping up a little bit more, right? They've been I would say like a good defense since their bye week. They haven't been that same. Like they're not like a good quote unquote good matchup,
Yeah.
for opposing offenses. Because
Right.
I don't know.
And
Kirk obviously threw for 400. But
Yeah.
that's Kirk Cousins in this offense capable of doing what they're doing because we saw what Jefferson was capable of.
Yeah, with this defense, I think it's relative. You look at the way they were playing at the beginning of the season, you look at them now. Middle of the pack is all you're asking for them to be competitive, and that's what they've been. So
Yeah.
it works. And Aiden Hutchinson's come on. He looks like he's going to be a contributor. He's going to be really good for the Lions, not just this year, but down the stretch. Kirby Joseph too. It's not like they're out of playmakers there. They have guys on defense that can do it. They're just now putting it together, and that should bode well for their fantasy prospects, especially if they're in competitive games. It'll keep the game from getting out of hand and then garbage time just kind of wrecking it. Although sometimes that can be effective. But, bottom line, the Lions look good. The offense looks much better than, it had looked the weeks after, at least going into the bye. And that's just good news for everyone across the board. And hopefully these running backs can get something going.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't know if it's good news for DeAndre Swift. Like, super frustrating day. Only 6 carries for 21 yards. Jamal Williams had 16 carries. Only 4 targets for DeAndre Swift. Not sure why this is remaining a 3-man split, in terms of snaps. Justin Jackson's still very involved. There's no reason why Jackson should get, 4 carries when Swift is only getting 7, right?
Right.
And Swift, Jackson only ran 4 less routes than Swift. So it's frustrating, man. Like, how are you dealing with Swift moving forward? It's almost like he moved backwards this week, and they have the Jets next week.
He's just a complete upside start at this point. I wouldn't want to start him as my RB1. I think RB2 you could get away with, but that's just for the upside. And dare I call him the Gabe Davis of the running back position? Because that's kind of what he's been doing.
Except
and obviously
he's talented.
He's talented. He also has he's only had one good week, in the past like 8. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to call him the Gabe Davis, because we've seen Gabe Davis do his thing a little bit more often than that, but recently it hasn't been the case. But with DeAndre Swift, he's just an upside start. You can't really confidently start him at this point. If he's a flex, I think that's ideal. You can start him as a flex and maybe get away with it. But with these guys coming off a bye, you might have better, more secure options for your flex as well. I think DeAndre Swift, he's liable to put up this type of performance every week now. I was hoping we'd see something similar to what we saw last week. Obviously, we were all jumping for joy because he got back to that role that made him, a fantasy star. But it looks like it's just kind of going to go however it goes, with this offense. And if DeAndre Swift is part of it, I don't think they have plans to really feature him as much as maybe these receivers. So I think for now, he's just an upside play. And I'm not too confident. Like I said, ideally, he's a flex for me. I don't want to have him at my RB2 unless I'm in desperate measures. But with these guys coming off bye, you might have better options. And I think it would be okay to start guys with a safer floor, like maybe even David Montgomery. Obviously, he's going to be all right. But I think DeAndre Swift's ceiling is higher than David Montgomery. But the thing is, the chances that DeAndre Swift hits his ceiling are a lot lower than David Montgomery, having a solid day. And in the playoffs, you can't have those duds.
Yeah. I mean, Montgomery's going up against Philly in week 15, but I'm going to be starting Montgomery over DeAndre Swift for sure.
And it's tough because we had him ranked as a low-end RB1. It was looking so good. It's just sad.
His usage was great last week. We thought he was back, and now apparently he's not.
Yep.
And it sucks. Now, we talked about Chigoziem Okonkwo, right? And he needs to be paid attention to because in redraft and dynasty, right? 6 for 45 and a touchdown. He ran around on only 52% of dropbacks because he was sharing that load with Austin Hooper. But he was targeted on 25% of his routes as a rookie. Okay. He's been looking great on a per route basis. He's leading all tight ends in the NFL right now in yards per route run this year. So
that's crazy.
Keep an eye on him. Okay. Dynasty, like you might not even have him on your roster. So pick his ass up. Maybe he's on your taxi squad, maybe. But for me personally, like, he should be picked up in redraft as well. Now, you got to keep in mind, Treylon Burks should be back this week. Mm-hmm. So the targets might not be flowing towards him. He's still sharing the load with Austin Hooper, even though I believe that he shouldn't. But we could see his routes go down a little bit more this week. We'll see. But yeah, Treylon Burks could come back and then start demanding some more targets. So, he's not a slam dunk by any means, but he remains a streamer because it looks like the talent is leaping off the page right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me. If he's just a streamer at this point, you're fine to pick him up, unless you have guys like I mean, Mark Andrews had a really quiet day, but he's still going to be defaulted to, I think, tight end too.
I
you know,
guess.
unless you have Travis Kelce at this point, it looks like it's just purgatory.
Listen, let me
at the
ask you
tight end
this:
position.
if Anthony Brown is the quarterback next week, like if I have like David Njoku or something like that, I'm probably playing him over Mark Andrews.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because you talk about another quarterback with a quarterback situation, but Deshaun Watson, at least he's looking, David Njoku's way, it looks like. So he's going to have that
Yeah.
workload a little bit more locked in than maybe Mark Andrews. Who knows? Maybe Anthony Brown's just a target funnel for
Yeah, you
Mark
never know.
Andrews. I don't trust them to throw it that much. If they do truly just stick with Anthony Brown, they're not going to have a pass attack. I think it's going to be mostly run. I'd expect a Bryce Perkins-esque type of performance like we saw a couple weeks ago with the Rams, where they just had to start somebody and they don't throw it a whole lot. So I think with the tight end position the way it is, and I'm not saying Chigoziem Okonkwo is going to be someone you're going to be starting as a top 5 or 6 tight end. I think he slides right into consideration with all the rest of them because I think you could make a case to start him against the Chargers. I think better than you could make a case for Mark Andrews to start with Anthony Brown at quarterback next week.
Maybe.
I think Okonkwo, the way he's been playing, it looks like they're going to have him at least relatively involved. That's all you can really ask for out of a tight end at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I can't even argue with that. To be honest with you, I can't.
It's crazy. Tight ends just are not very good this season.
Saquon Barkley, he went into the game on Sunday with a 50-50 chance of playing. He ended up going. But the injury costed him his normal role. Plus, on top of that, the Giants got blown out, so he didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. But only 11 touches on 31% of snaps. Gary Brightwell and Matt Breida were very involved from the get. They all ended up sharing work. They combined to out-touch Barkley. But yeah, the Eagles just killed them. That was part of the reason Barkley didn't play late in this game. And on top of that, the neck injury. So hopefully he gets some full practices this week and he'll be able to go next week fully. That's the hope.
Right.
We'll see.
Another thing with the Giants, what happened to them? They were 7-2.
We are who we thought they were.
Yeah. It's just crazy. I mean, kudos to Brian DeBall. Everyone was calling him the coach of the year. I can't say I didn't see this coming because it's the Giants, but I mean, what are the odds? Do you think if they keep losing, like, I don't think Saquon, is there going to be a reason for them to keep fielding him? I mean, obviously they have to make a decision with his contract coming up, but like, I don't know.
They still got to make the play. They're still trying to make the playoffs here, right?
Yeah.
Like if they beat the Commanders this week, they're probably going to be in the playoffs.
If they lose, though, I feel like what are the odds they make the playoffs then, right?
Then it goes very low.
Because
this is a big game.
Especially
this is almost like a playoff game.
Yeah,
exactly.
Especially if the Lions win next week, then it's like a 4 or 5 team race for wild card spots.
This is a playoff game, pretty much, between the Giants and the Commanders this week.
Yeah, so Saquon, he's definitely going to play, but like you have to wonder if they lose. Like I would be concerned if I have Saquon that I'm not going to have him even for the championship in Week 16. That would be a concern.
Say it ain't so, Zach. Say it ain't so.
Say it ain't so.
Let's see, man. Hopefully, regardless, hopefully they continue to play him. Like because that would be a really tough situation.
Yeah, especially with the way he started. It's just tough.
Did you see Jerick McKinnon though? Like, did you see him?
Oh yeah, I started him in one of my leagues. It was great.
Really? Oh, good. That's what's up, man. Good for you, man. But that first catch that he made, like a wild toss from Patrick Mahomes, he was going out of bounds. Like McKinnon did the rest. Like he ended up with another long receiving touchdown. He ended up catching 7 of 9 for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns. His role didn't really change in this game. Don't overvalue him going into next week. But he's an upside flex play. That's what he was this week too. He has a very low floor. But the Chiefs get Houston next week. These running backs are both in play again, both him and Pacheco.
Yep.
He's still going to be, a potential flex play for you if you don't have anybody else.
Yeah. Did anybody have Jerick McKinnon for leading the Chiefs in receiving? I don't think so. That's just crazy. He played essentially the role of a receiver. At this point, he had 7 catches on 9 targets. He only had 6 carries. He didn't do a whole lot with those carries, but the receiving work was good enough. I didn't seriously think he was going to have this type of game. I mean, I started him in one league just out of desperation. I actually started him over J.K. Dobbins, which worked out okay for me. But I
Good
wasn't
call.
expecting this. Definitely don't expect this on a weekly basis either. These past 2 weeks have been his 2 best weeks, I think, for fantasy football this whole season. So we talked about the role. It hasn't changed. The other thing that was weird is it was against the Broncos of all teams. Their defense was actually, they've been holding teams down pretty well. They had no answers for the Chiefs yesterday. This is just like a blip, a good blip. Usually, like you hear about a blip on the radar, it's bad. This is like a good blip on the radar. I'm not expecting this type of production every week, but maybe he'd put you into the playoffs if you were down a running back. You down David Montgomery, you replaced him with Jerick McKinnon. You're sitting pretty.
Yeah, I would say so. I think you'll be sitting pretty if you started Jerry Jeudy yesterday. He came through, on the good matchup out of the slot against the Chiefs, 8 for 73 on 9 targets with 3 touchdowns, 2 from Russell Wilson, 1 from Brett Rippon. Jeudy has another great matchup out of the slot next week against Arizona. So Sutton potentially missing another game because of that hamstring injury. He should be in lineups this week again.
Yeah,
obviously.
Absolutely. I mean, Brett Rippon got it done. The funny thing is, and it sucks. Were you watching a Broncos game?
Yeah.
We were starting to see vintage Russell Wilson, which was crazy. Obviously, of course, against the Chiefs of all teams, down 27. Maybe they let up a little bit on the gas, the Chiefs. They kind of let them do their thing. But Russell Wilson was making passes he wasn't making all season. Of course, he goes down with injury. Jerry Jeudy did catch a 3rd touchdown, by virtue of them being at the goal line when Brett Rippon came in. So I'm not giving too much credit to Brett Rippon. I'm not sure how awesome of a start he's going to be next week just because Brett Rippon's there and he didn't look too good. But
he's an upgrade.
You think Brett Rippon's an upgrade over Russell Wilson?
Yes.
What I saw from Russell Wilson yesterday, he looked okay. I
did not like what I saw out of Russell Wilson yesterday. I know that he put up the numbers, but for every good play that he had 2 bad ones. And he had some really questionable head-scratching throws. Like, what are you doing? It was one of those things where, he made some good plays, and Jerry Jeudy had a really good matchup this week. The Chiefs, are a team that have let up the most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So this wasn't a huge surprise to me. But the numbers were there for Wilson. But, man, there was some head-scratching, like, what are you doing type of plays from Russell Wilson yesterday, where I'm just like, the Broncos, if they started Brett Rippon all season long, they would have had probably 3 or 4 more wins than they do now. I really think that would be the case because the way that Russell Wilson looked yesterday was worse, I thought, in this game than he looked in a lot of other games this year.
Maybe. I guess that's what happens. They did go down 27-0 to start the game. So yes, I guess you could say that's true. But from a fantasy perspective, if I'm looking at just fantasy, this
he
looked
put
like
up a
vintage Russell Wilson. You know what I'm saying? This looked like vintage Russell Wilson. He was making the deep passes a little bit. He was looking a little bit better. Obviously, to be doing that coming from down 27 is an issue, and that's what they've had all season. But I'm not too ecstatic about Jerry Jeudy next week. I think it's going to be another quiet day. I don't have much faith in Brett Rippon. Not that I had a whole lot in Wilson, but I think he's just more of the same for Jerry Jeudy. So I'm tempering expectations for Jerry Jeudy next week. Even though he had this big performance, wouldn't be surprised if he went 6 for 50 next week. And I'm not saying that's not bad, but I don't think it's going to be what a lot of people are projecting for Jerry Jeudy after that hat trick that he had.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just love the matchup too. Arizona's given up so many fantasy points to slot wide receivers.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see who they put in the slot tonight against them with Jacoby Myers out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And Jacoby Myers, who would it be? Like, not Nelson Aguilar. He's been on the outside.
I think, but I think in this game, Aguilar is going to be the one in the slot with Myers out. He did play the slot a couple times this year with Myers out. Not kind of rotating inside outside. I think he'll be the primary slot this week. So we'll see. Maybe he can get it done. But I think Hunter Henry will probably be the biggest beneficiary tonight. With Jacoby Myers out.
Right.
But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully whoever you got tonight, whoever you need comes through.
Right.
All right, so let's wrap this podcast up. Just a couple more things to talk about real quick. 49ers absolutely destroyed the Bucs. Brock Purdy was solid. Made some key throws. Christian McCaffrey looking like vintage CMC, right? Deebo Samuel unfortunately suffered a high ankle sprain. Honestly, this is great news considering what it looked like when he was carted off. It looked like a season-ending injury. He was crying. Like, it was a bad scene.
Did you see the play that it happened on too? Like it was
gross.
Bad.
Yeah, it did not look good at all. Like I almost felt like both of his legs were caught up weird.
It looked like they both like bent out like sideways. It was weird.
It sucked, dude. And he's probably going to be out for a bit. He might be out for the rest of the fantasy playoffs, right? If this is like a legit high ankle sprain. And if that's the case, I think CMC's usage might get a little crazy the rest of the way. Because a lot of the ways they're using Debo, that's the way they use CMC as well. So just look out for CMC. He has good matchups all the way through, through your fantasy championship. So, he's going to be able to get it done for you. I want to talk about the Bucks backfield real quick. Rachaad White led the backfield with 18 opportunities to Fournette's 11. White played 4 more snaps than Fournette, but Fournette had a couple more targets, ran 10 more routes than White. It's basically like a net 50-50 split at this point. They really just take each other's ceiling away. But at least they're being peppered in the pass game. So if you're in a PPR league, at least they have some sort of floor, even in a tough matchup like this one.
It's going to keep them relevant at this point. The ceiling is gone with these two. Now you're playing them for the floor. They're not. I don't think either of them are top 20 plays at this point. There's a bunch of other guys with upside that you're going to be starting over them. So fall from grace for them, especially with what we anticipated Rachaad White hopefully being a little bit better than he's been these past few weeks.
Yeah. 100%. The Panthers backfield moved to a 3-man timeshare with Raheem Blackshear getting into the action. He vultured a goal line snap, vultured a goal line touchdown. Chuba Hubbard, like you mentioned, like you started him yesterday. Good job. He also played a ton of short yardage and goal line situations, which was unfortunate for anyone who started Deontay Foreman. None of these backs were on the field for more than 50% of snaps. So, Deontay Foreman, a couple weeks ago, he was getting all of the work, and now it's really a timeshare between him and Chuba Hubbard right now.
Right. And just from this game, I know it's not what we're talking about with the Panthers backfield, but are you worried about Geno Smith at all after that game?
I'm not worried about him. They let him cook, and we'll talk about and real quick, let's hit on Travis Homer real quick, and I'll kind of work my way into Geno. Like, he was on the field for 90% of snaps for the Seahawks. Travis Homer was on the field for 90% of snaps. You tell me any running back is going to be on the field for 90% of snaps, I'm like, oh, okay, that's at least a top 20 week right there. Nope. Yep. 5.4 PPR fantasy points, only 12 opportunities. The process was okay. The execution was terrible. The Seahawks, they get the 49ers next week. So if we have a similar injury situation, with these running backs next week, I don't think I'm playing Travis Homer unless I'm super desperate. But 90% of snaps, though, man, like, what a lost opportunity there. Okay, so they let Geno cook, right? And that's what happens when you let Geno cook, right? Like, it was a little bit of a trap game. I think Geno might have been underestimating the Panthers a little bit. So that's kind of why I think the Seahawks are playing on Thursday night, right? So I feel like
I think they are.
They're playing the 49ers on Thursday night. So this seems like a situation with the Seahawks were potentially looking forward to that Thursday night game as like the big game, and they were underestimating the Panthers a little bit, and they ended up with the L. So I'm not worried about him. This is a tough matchup against the 49ers. So like, I am tempering my expectations for Geno on Thursday night. But I think after that, I'm not so concerned. I still think he's a quarterback 1 for fantasy.
Right. I guess that's true. And I want to pin it on, he had a couple bad interceptions because 2 of them went right. One of them went to J.C. Horn. I forget who the other, C.J. Henderson. They both went right to the defender. So that was just a little bit worrisome. But I think with the playmakers he has, you saw Tyler Lockett's catch. Like, man, he still got it. So
Marquise Goodwin got it done. DK Metcalf got it done. So, and look at Geno's output. He still had 22 fantasy points and 4-point passing touchdown scoring. Look at his last couple games. Like, since week 8, 19 fantasy points, 22, 19, 20, 24, 22. So he's been getting it done for fantasy. And, I wouldn't put him, maybe next week, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett can take advantage of their opportunities, and he could still get it done potentially next week. I wouldn't put it past him. But after that, Kansas City, and then the Jets, another tough matchup. But against that Kansas City defense, he should have a good week. So I'm not, losing out hope on him, but he definitely has a tough matchup. 2 out of the next 3 games for sure.
Right.
Let's see. Tua, really shut the bed last night, he looked lost all game. It led to a very disappointing game from, Jalen Waddle. Tyreek Hill, though, had a decent game, got that fumble recovery touchdown that we talked about earlier. But keep in mind, oh, yeah, by the way, I didn't mention DJ Moore. Apparently, he has an ankle injury that I just found out about. He's getting tests on that, so keep an eye out on that. Tyreek also had an ankle injury. Obviously, he played through it. He'll probably be fine for next week. Just keep an eye on that. He'll likely land on the injury report. Jeff Wilson also got hurt in this game. He suffered a hip injury, left in the second quarter. So monitor that, because if he's out next week, Raheem Mostert, he's going to carry the full load against Buffalo next week. He'll be close to a must start, I would say, against Buffalo. Top 15 running back for sure.
Right.
But it is worth noting that Mostert was the guy to start the game. He handled most of the work early before Wilson got hurt. And then Wilson started to come in and, look okay. But yeah, man, just real quick to close it out. Justin Herbert, he put all the critics to rest yesterday, right?
Yep.
Emmanuel Acho is hurting today with all of his Justin Herbert slander. But both Mike Williams, Keenan Allen came through. Keenan Allen, dude, he caught 12 balls on 14 targets, for 92 yards. Like, he was just looking for him all game long. He's looking like a PPR beast the rest of the way.
And that's what we've known Keenan Allen to be. Justin Herbert looks for him, and Justin Herbert's a different quarterback when Keenan Allen's on the field. Keenan Allen is going to benefit from that. He got it done even with Mike Williams having, his catches. He had a touchdown. Keenan Allen didn't, which bodes well, I think, for Keenan Allen. His production is pretty solid, not touchdown dependent. The offense is good. And like I said, the social media quarterback, he should be getting a lot of likes this week.
There you go. And with that, let's close it out. Appreciate you guys. Listen, if you made the fantasy playoffs, congratulations. Okay. If you didn't make the fantasy playoffs, it sucks. I get it. All year long, this is what you've been waiting for, to try to make it. But listen, it's all right. It happens. That's why we play the game. But what makes it more fun is, just keep watching football. At least now you can watch football without the pressure.
Right.
But just stay in tune with everything that's going on. Just make sure that you kind of stay on top of the news, stay on top of which players are breaking out. There's always players at the end of the season that ends up doing a little bit of extra opportunity, extra production. And those are the guys that might become values, next year. So you want to keep paying attention. Don't tune out completely. That would be my advice. But we appreciate you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely don't tune out if you're playing out of a punishment too. That's one thing.
That's true.
If your league has a punishment, your matchups, your game doesn't stop now. Now it's avoid the punishment.
100%. But yeah, so good luck tonight, guys. Whoever needs, whatever you need tonight in order for you to make the playoffs, good luck. Hope it works out for you. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow for our waiver wire episode at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll get it done. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. See you later. Bye-bye.